Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer reporting police agencies in Scandinavia and the Netherlands are on a high state of alert tonight after warnings that Palestinian terrorists might be planning new attacks in those countries. Police were swarming all through the area around the Stockholm airport after Interpol, the international police agency, said that it had picked up reports that the terrorist organization that caused the massacres at the Rome and Vienna airports was planning to hit Jewish and Israeli targets in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and the Netherlands. The increased security in those countries was concentrated at the airports, but as was the case in Stockholm, more security was also in evidence around synagogues, historic sites, and Israeli diplomatic buildings. Authorities would not give specifics on what information was picked up, only that it was being taken seriously. President Reagan discussed the latest wave of terrorism with some foreign reporters yesterday in Washington, and today the White House released the text of the interview. We have more on that now from Gary Schuster.
In an interview with European journalists, President Reagan said he would have to see evidence that Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi had ended Libya's financial backing and training of terrorists before he ordered an end to the economic sanctions imposed by the United States. The president said he doesn't view the economic steps he took against Libya, which include an end to all trade and freezing Libya's assets, as something that goes on forever. He said you think of it as something that says, straighten up and fly right, Mr. Gaddafi, and then things will change. At his press conference last Tuesday, Mr. Reagan insisted that there is irrefutable evidence that Gaddafi backed the 8 terrorists who attacked the Rome and Vienna airports. But top Italian and Austrian officials say they have no proof of that.
Assistant Secretary of State John Whitehead will visit several European governments next week to reveal classified information to show that Gaddafi is widely connected to terrorist activities and that he met several times in recent months with Abu Nidal, who heads the Palestinian group believed to be responsible for the airport attacks.
The president said that he hopes once European leaders realize the scope of Gaddafi's terrorist involvement, they will join the United States in economically isolating Libya. So far, the Allies have refused to join the Reagan administration's move.
Using force against Libya is not something he could discuss, the president said, but he scoffed at the suggestion of a U.S. senator that Gaddafi be assassinated. You don't join them at their level, Mr. Reagan said. Terrorism in response to terrorism is not the answer. Gary Schuster, CBS News, the White House.
In a new twist, the Washington Post reported today that the foreign ministers of Italy and Austria now believe the terrorists who struck in Rome and Vienna were actually trained in Lebanon rather than Libya, but there was no other confirmation of that. In Libya today, things seem to be quieting down, and we have more on that now from Steve Croft.
After 10 days, the mostly rhetorical war between President Reagan and Colonel Gaddafi finally has hit a lull. Canada's decision to join U.S. efforts to isolate Libya economically and Italy's decision to stop selling Gaddafi arms will prove a minor irritant to the colonel, but that is about all. At the Islamic conference in Morocco, Libya's foreign minister said the U.S. decision to freeze Libyan assets will damage American credibility and create the impression that the United States is a risky investment for foreign capital. The latest crisis has also reinforced the economic links between Western Europe and Libya. Gaddafi this week called it one of his greatest strengths, and he's used it to drive another wedge between America and its allies. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher denounced the use of violence in reprisals against terrorism, and she is one of President Reagan's most reliable allies. Despite the sharp exchanges, the military alerts, and the presidential orders, not that much of substance has happened this week. The United States has finally cut its very short ties with Libya and called American workers home. The crisis has polished Colonel Gaddafi's image in Libya and won him new friends in the Arab world, at least for the time being. And it seems as though President Reagan and Colonel Gaddafi are running out of things to say and do to each other. Steve Croft, CBS News, Tripoli, Libya.
Pope John Paul today called terrorism an inexcusable crime against humanity. The Pope spoke at his annual address to diplomats, a credit to the Vatican, telling them we are faced with formidable networks of people who do not hesitate to kill innocents, and he said there can be no justification for that.
Now it's become a kind of routine middle-class appliance.